Hi, I'm Tom with some more ATPL tips, and today I want to tell you how I got these, a UK and ANIASA CPL MEIR.
We all just passed. They're putting the plane away. CPL MEIR.
In February 2021, I went to Diamond Flight Academy Scandinavia, based in Kalmar in Sweden. I had an amazing time. I want to tell you all about it. And at the end, I'll give you my top tips for finding the right place for you to do your CPL MEIR as well. So let's go. Diamond Flight Academy Scandinavia, which I'm just going to refer to from now as Diamond, is basically based on the airport in Kalmar in southern Sweden. They offer a CPL MEIR all-in-one over the course of about 2 months, with new students starting at the beginning of each month. They exclusively use the DA-42 aircraft, they have their own accommodation, and the student intake numbers are really small. By the way, I'm not being sponsored to make this video by the school at all. I'm just giving you my honest opinion. And if you've already been to Diamond, then tell other people all about your experience as well in the comments below. We modular flight students within the UK and Europe, we've got a lot of options when it comes to finding the right place for us to do our training. But actually, I think having so many options available to us makes it really hard to choose the right place to go and study. Of course, you only get to do this training once, so it's pretty important to choose a school that will be the best fit for you and what your needs are. For me, my priorities were these. Firstly, I was looking for a school with an excellent reputation and a really high standard of training. Secondly, I was looking for a school with a competitive price, not necessarily the cheapest. And thirdly, I was looking for a place with as few hidden fees as possible. You and I were on budgets, and hands up if you've ever been stung for unexpected extra costs during your training. The price for Diamond is on their website, and at first glance the course isn't the cheapest, but when I was doing my research, comparing lots of different schools, I actually found that when I factored in extras like accommodation at schools where it wasn't provided, or extra landings at schools where they only included a small number in their quote, Diamond was actually cheaper than some of the cheap options here in the UK. And finally, for me, the location was not so important. I finished my ATPL exams in the UK while it was still a part of EASA, so going to Diamond actually allowed me to get dual licensed, with the UK CAA having a grace period for foreign examiners after Brexit, and the Swedish Transport Agency, they were happy to accept my EASA ATPL theory exams. You definitely need to do your research to make sure that any foreign study you do will be acceptable to your licensing authority. I first heard about Diamond through a couple of my ATPL classmates called Tom and Andrew. But as you know, before I could go on to do the CPL MEIR course, I had to do our building first. And to do that, Andrew and I went to South Africa. We spent the last 2 months of 2020 flying around South Africa, having an incredible time and saving a bucket load of money compared to what we've been quoted to do our building here in the UK. I'll make a video about that one day too, I'm sure. When we went to South Africa, Andrew had already got a place booked at Diamond to start in February 2021. Having heard so much about Diamond, the school went pretty quickly to the top of my list. So as soon as I got back to the UK in January 2021, I fired off a load of emails, and in the email that I sent to Diamond, I mentioned that I knew Andrew, and within a couple of hours I got an email back from Henrik, who runs the school. I liked the answers that he'd given me to my questions, and he offered me a place to start with Andrew just a couple of weeks later, so that's what I did. As I mentioned, Diamond is based on the airport at Kalmar in southern Sweden. One of the best things about the school is that the intake numbers are really low for each student group. A new group joins more or less at the beginning of each month, and in my February 2021 group there were only 4 of us. There was myself and Andrew, as well as Chris and Palmir from France. The group before mine had just 2 students, and the group that started in March had 3. Now, some schools will take as many students as they possibly can to maximise their income, which can mean that as a student you can spend ages sitting around waiting for a plane to become available. But the small group numbers at Diamond meant that I never felt like I was just a number. And despite the small number of students while I was at Diamond, we had a team of 5 instructors looking after us. That's a phenomenal student-teacher ratio. And let's talk about the instructors for a minute, because they were outstanding. There was a real range of experience among them. Some of the guys were on furlough from some of the major European airlines, which meant that they brought with them all of their real-world experience of SOPs, flight planning and briefings, while other instructors have got literally thousands of hours of experience on the DA42, and that of course brings a level of intimacy with the aircraft and its systems that you just can't synthesize. The net result is that we had a huge wealth of experience covering absolutely every aspect of a career in aviation, from the MEP right through to commercial airline operations, where many of us will be hoping to get jobs one day.
Now you're properly trimmed. Before you weren't, but now you were keeping the altitude very good, but it was the wrong altitude. It was 1920.
But of course, it's not just about the credentials of the instructors, right? If they're not nice people, then your experience as a student is not going to be a great one, regardless of what the instructors have achieved in their own individual careers.
I will let you know.
Okay.
To not give you too much heads up. Gonna divert you to a new point.
Sounds good.
Given that the whole point of the course is to spend 2 months inside an aircraft or the sim with the instructors, actually it is really important to know that you're going to get on with the person you're sat next to. And honestly, 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10 for the instructors. To be honest, the culture at Diamond as a school seems to be pretty unique. In fact, I don't think that I've ever experienced a culture like it at any type of educational institution, not just within flight schools. If we go back to my priority list, the last thing to mention here about the school is that there were 0 hidden fees. The advertised price, which you can find on their website, that's the price you pay for the course. You obviously have to factor in things like your food, and if you want to get a bus into town or something like that, then obviously you need to think about that. But in terms of extra costs for the course, there's none. Apart from you can upgrade to a different type of bedroom if you'd like. Okay, let's talk about the DA42. Diamond exclusively use the DA42 aircraft. They've got a fleet of 3 DA42s as well as a DA42 FNPT2 simulator. As a training aircraft, the DA42 is excellent. It's a really popular training aircraft, and for good reason. It's stable, predictable, and of course being able to do the entire CPL MEIR in one type of aircraft is a serious advantage over schools where the CPL and sometimes the IR are taught in a single engine piston. The only thing that's probably not amazing about the DA42 is how the aircraft handles on the ground, but from talking to other people I think that is true of most MEP training aircraft. And actually one thing that surprised me about the DA42 and may seem really small but actually was a really huge deal was the visibility through the front canopy. It's outstanding because it's a single wraparound piece of plexiglass for a windscreen. There are no structural pillars getting in your field of vision while you're looking for ground reference points or doing circuit work or anything like that. And also it's kind of cool the first time you get into a multi-engine piston and you don't have a big prop right in front of the nose. The DA42 is fully FADEC, meaning that each engine only has a power lever. There's no mixture or prop control. The engine started first time every time, and if you've ever had to sit and try to coax a piston engine to life on a cold day, I know that you'll appreciate that. Power settings are measured in percentage, which is excellent prep for those hoping to move into the jet world, where you'll spend a lot of time flying pitch and power settings. But I do think it might be worth spending a couple of hours getting familiar with a more conventionally old school type of aircraft that has separate prop and mixture controls where the currency is manifold pressure and RPM settings. One of the jobs that I've applied for since getting qualified does a sim assessment in a Piper Seneca. So in order to be ready for that, I'll need to get a couple of extra hours in a sim somewhere. Avionics wise, the DA42 is loaded with the Garmin G1000 suite, which is just mind-blowingly amazing. Situational awareness is phenomenal, and it's a really intuitive system to learn and use. Now, of course, you learn to do everything based on raw data, but the G1000 also has the ability, through some tools and toys, to take your training a step closer to the real world with things like a track diamond and a fantastic moving map, as well as the ability to build your flight plan really quickly and easily. Now, I know that this will divide opinion. People who learn with an old school six-pack will probably say that they are the better pilots, while people who learn with a glass cockpit will say that they have a more relevant training experience and then an easier transition into a modern airliner. And then the sim used by the school is exactly the same as the aircraft flown, with like one or two tiny exceptions. This means you can literally practice something in the sim and then go and fly it in the plane, and the transition doesn't feel awkward or difficult at all. The DA42 sims are lifted straight from the main DA42 production line, so the cabin is literally the same, and the G1000s are airworthy units. They're not scaled down or simplified versions. I know lots of schools who will use a generic simulator or a simulator for a different type of aircraft to the MEP that they have in their fleet, and I'm sure that that can at least lead to some confusion through handling or operational differences. The DA42 sim is an excellent tool. The only minor differences between the sim and the aircraft in Diamond's fleet are that the sim uses a slightly different autopilot system, and secondly, the sensation of using the rudder in the sim is different to the aircraft. But if those are the only differences, you can get over that really, really easily. One of the most powerful aspects of the sim is the ability to debrief in such detail after a session. Here are a few pictures I took after sim sessions so that I could go back and review what I'd done. The CPL MEIR course at Diamond is made up of 40 hours in the aircraft and 40 hours in the sim. It's a really logical structure with the exams at the end, but now I'm not going to go into too much detail about how the course was put together or what's in it, because to be honest, that's venturing into Diamond's intellectual property. I'm trying to tell you about my experience and how great it was. I'm not trying to teach you how to set up a course to rival Diamond as a flight school. Trust me, the structure and the content were phenomenal, and when it came to doing the exam flight tests, they felt more like a formality than anything else. They certainly weren't something to be worried about. We were super well prepared. What I will tell you about though are a couple of tools used by Diamond to help make the students' experience streamlined and to make the most of our time. Now, the tools are really simple. You're probably already using them, but in my experience of flight training, Diamond was a step ahead. Specifically, those tools are WhatsApp, Dropbox, an iPad, and a piece of flight planning software called Rocket Route. Okay, nothing on this list here is technologically groundbreaking or new to you probably, but the way that Diamond are using these tools makes the student's experience run so smoothly. Firstly, WhatsApp. Now, I'm sure you're already using it, and at Diamond we had a few different WhatsApp groups. So normally we would get a message each day telling us what our schedule would be for the next day, and it often consisted of a briefing in the morning or sometimes the night before, followed by some time in a plane or the sim, or occasionally both. And to prepare, we had access to all of the school's training material and charts in Dropbox through the iPads. So preparing for a lesson briefing was really easy, and at the briefing we'd be introduced to a new concept, or we'd review something that we'd already spent some time on, and we'd be told what to create for our flight plans for the lesson. Then we'd create our flight plans, and this was super easy using Rocket on the school's flight planning computer. Super straightforward. Then once filed or saved in Rocket we could really easily and quickly download a briefing pack from Rocket that included everything. A nav log, mass and balance, weather, predictions, NOTAMs, some other stuff in there as well. And we had all that information available to us on the iPads. Perfect. And so all we would need to take to the plane was our iPad and a headset. To be honest, I also used to carry a power bank too, just in case. Now, one of the great things about using iPads for charts is that you can scribble temporary notes all over them. And one of the things that I used to do was add a load of sticky notes of reminders of things that had caught me out previously, which I found really added a layer of security for me, because I knew that if I became saturated in a lesson, then there was much less of a chance of forgetting something vital in my setup for an approach or something, because I'd written myself a few reminders and prompts which I could turn to if I needed them.
Okay, so we're going to focus on this approach runway 16, with from chips and paid given to effective 7th of November in Kalmar, Sweden.
On board the plane, we used our iPads for absolutely everything, apart from during the CPL when we also used some paper charts for cross-country navigation. Now, at first, I found writing with my finger on the iPad a bit of a clunky, weird thing to be doing, and it probably took me a couple of lessons to get used to it. But in the end, it became a really intuitive system for me to use an iPad as an electronic flight bag in the cockpit, which, as we all know, is the standard way of operating in an airline now anyway. So those 4 tools, like I said, none of them are new or groundbreaking technologies, but Diamond uses them all in a really simple, effective and cohesive way. And of course, the more streamlined the process is for us as students, the better prepared we can be for a lesson, and the better prepared we are, the better overall experience we'll have, and the better we will fly. Okay, that's the planes. Let's talk about accommodation. As far as the accommodation goes, students stay in what used to be the airport hotel. It's big enough to give students privacy when they need it, and yet somehow cozy enough to create a really relaxing environment. The bedrooms in the main building all have their own private toilets and showers, and there's a couple of different categories of room.
This is my room. Big mirror, sofa, bed, walk-in wardrobe, bathroom, underfloor heating.
Then downstairs in the basement, which used to be the hotel spa, there's a huge sauna and a hot tub. There's also a hot tub outside as well. In the basement there's also a small gym, table tennis table and a pool table as well. The fact that these things are in the basement means that we use them loads. Honestly, I think Andrew and I played table tennis or pool at least once every day. There are 2 buildings at the property, and the other building houses some more bedrooms and the student kitchen, dining room and another lounge area. One of the benefits I found of having the kitchen and dining room in a separate building meant that mealtimes became a kind of communal thing. We all seemed to enjoy sitting around together at the dining table, and again that helped to make the experience feel like home for a couple of months.
Happy birthday to you. Thank you.
And the location of the accommodation is excellent. Like I said, it's an old airport hotel, so it was only a 5-minute, maybe a 10-minute walk to the planes, and the simulator building is super close too, also only a 5 or 10-minute walk away. As a base, Kalmar Öland Airport, it's a fairly small airport that was really heavily affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a training base, it's absolutely perfect. There's one main runway with another secondary short crosswind runway, and it basically has every approach that you need for an instrument rating. Runway 16 has an ILS and localizer approach, it has an NDB approach and an RNP, while runway 34 has a VOR approach and another RNP. There are also a handful of departures and arrivals too, with the arrivals based on a DME arc. Now, with all of this available at Kalmar, it means there's actually very little need to go to any of the other airports during your instrument rating, but to only practice at Kalmar would be very limiting. So we did fly to other airports to get a feel for short IFR cross-country flights from A to B, and there are some really good airports within just a short distance. We primarily made use of Ronneby and, I'm going to say this wrong, Växjö. Apologies for my pronunciation. We did also fly to a handful of other airports too, though our options were hampered a bit by coronavirus restrictions, obviously. On top of Ronneby and Växjö, I flew to Linköping, I flew to Malmö Sturup and Oskarshamn in Sweden, as well as Kiritz in Germany and Bornholm in Denmark. Also, we visited quite a few different places in the sim, but I don't really think they count, although I'd love to put them in my logbook. Okay, so as a base, Kalmar Airport is great, and as a town, Kalmar is fab too. There's a really cheap and easy to use bus network that puts the best supermarket about 5 minutes away, and the town centre is only about 10 minutes further away on the same bus. The town itself is a bit of a Swedish tourist destination in the hot summer months, so it's got loads of excellent bars, including one that I really liked in the old city walls that dates from like 1500s or something. I gather it does get quite hot in Kalmar, though it was cold when I was there. The day I arrived it was minus 20 degrees, but that was a bit of an extreme day. Also in Kalmar there's a cool old castle you can go and look at, which Palmir loved.
In Palmir there's a castle.
This is what I was looking at. Have you seen it?
Every time we go to Kalmar.
Oh, shall we go to the castle?
Oh, I'm okay.
Also, it's worth saying that getting to Kalmar is fairly easy as well. Commercial flight options were reduced when I went, but were still possible. I flew into Stockholm and then down with SAS to Kalmar. There are also some really great train options that will get you up to Stockholm or over the bridge to the airport in Copenhagen if you want to do that within just a few hours. And there are coach options as well. Now, I mentioned flying to Kiritz in Germany. I actually went there twice, and both times were incredible, but I have to quickly tell you about the second time that I went. It was the mother of all adventures, and it was a huge highlight for me in my time at Diamond. Before COVID, it would be very, very common for students or student groups to fly somewhere far away, stay there overnight, then come back the next day. This was obviously heavily restricted for us during COVID, but Diamond uses an engineering firm based in Germany to do all of their aircraft maintenance, which meant I did get to go there twice. So this second time I went to Kiritz, we took 2 aircraft and we needed both to be fixed on the same day, which was going to be pretty tough work. So Palmir and I left Kalmar at like 6 AM and then we flew the whole thing as a massive 350-mile cross-country VFR. It was a huge practice for our CPL skills test that was coming up just a few days later. Like I said, I did this trip with Palmir, who was flying the other aircraft, and the planning for this was a massive undertaking. If you've already done the CPL, you'll appreciate how meticulous and accurate you have to be with flight planning. So after going through the proposed route with instructor Chris, it then took Palmir and I basically the whole weekend of planning to get ready. Now, it's absolutely fine and normal to plot a waypoint on a VFR chart, but there is an element of inaccuracy there. Part of being a pilot is making use of all available resources, so I plotted the route using Google Earth, and it meant that I could actually see what each of the waypoints and midway points looked like in advance. Then I made a chronological PDF of images, a little bit geeky I know, and I used it on my iPad to verify where the points were along the way, and I cannot tell you how perfectly it worked. I think even my instructor Philip was impressed. Anyway, the German maintenance team were super efficient, as you would expect, and were able to successfully do what they needed to both aircraft, and we were able to head back to Kalmar earlier than we'd anticipated. As I mentioned, I flew with instructor Philip while PL MEIR was with instructor Chris, and on the way back they gave us a series of diversions to take us on a scenic tour of the Swedish coastline. This gave us an absolutely fantastic experience, but it also tested our diversion skills to the extreme. The day was incredibly exhausting, but was by far the absolute highlight of my time at Diamond. So, to summarise, my time at Diamond was absolutely incredible, and I'm so happy that I chose to go and do my CPL MEIR at that school. I'm guessing you're probably a modular student looking for a place to do your CPL and MEIR training. As a modular flight student with so many options, the most important thing that you can do for yourself is consider all of the options available to you. Don't just go with whatever is the closest or the cheapest or the easiest to stay at. You only get to do this training once. So here are my top tips to help you choose your CPL MEIR school. Firstly, look at websites like Pilot Network to see what other people have said. Then know what your budget is, and then contact the schools within that budget and ask them as many questions as you can. Things like what their hidden costs are, ask them what the waiting list time is like, and ask them what proportion of students don't actually manage to finish within their advertised or predicted timescale. Ask them who gets employed at the end as well. Ask them if accommodation is provided. Remember to factor in how you will get from that accommodation to the place where you're studying. Also, see how long it takes for schools to reply to you, as an indication of how interested in your business they actually are. To some schools, you'll just be a number. You'll just be another student handing over some money. But this is your hard-earned cash that's probably worth considerably more to you than it is to them. So spend it wisely. Now, if you haven't worked it out yet, then let me be clear. In my limited experience, I highly recommend Diamond Flight Academy Scandinavia as a place for you to do your CPL MEIR. I had an amazing time, but that doesn't mean that it's the perfect school for you. So use this video, think about my experience as I've described it, and whether it would fit you as well as it fit me. If you think Diamond Flight Academy might be a school that will work for you, then contact Henrik, and when you first contact him, tell him that I sent you. And finally, I have to say a massive shout out to Henrik and the instructors Philip, Chris, Arvid, Jonas and Matthias for making the course so excellent and enjoyable. And to my course mates Andrew, PL MEIR and Chris, as well as Dathli and Aaron and Alessandro, Killian and Seb. They all made the experience excellent, and I have to say thanks for them letting me use their photos and videos in this video as well. Let me know about your CPL MEIR experience in the comments below, and I'll see you next time with some more ATPL tips.